Hi everyone, I'm Leon Damali. I'm the founder and CEO of Vroggo. According to the US Department of Labor, 65% of today's primary students will work in jobs that don't exist today. So if you step back and think about that, what skills are going to be valuable in that future? It's hard to think about it and really understand what they might be. Given that environment, what can we do to prepare students today? Well, we've decided on two things. One is that virtual reality will be part of that landscape no matter what, and that STEM is going to be absolutely critical, even more so than just being a competitive advantage in the work landscape. It's really going to be table stakes, or you're going to need advanced STEM skills just to keep up. Einstein said that the only source of knowledge is experience. He was talking about experiential learning. And if you think about how we've learned historically, if you wanted to become a blacksmith, you were an apprentice to a blacksmith. If you wanted to become a sculptor, you learned under Michelangelo. But how do we scale experiential learning? It's not an easy thing to do. So our solution, what we've done, is we've leveraged educational best practices like group learning and assessments and rewards, all the things that help learning scale, moving towards next generation relative to discovery, those types of things. And we've combined that with immersive VR, and what immersive VR means is very interactive gameplay, group play, etc. Deep science content with 3D animation and other things included. Empowered teachers, giving them control over the experience. When we were originally prototyping what we do, which we'll talk about in a minute, the teachers were very concerned that the kids were going to be immersed in this virtual reality experience, and what am I doing while this is happening? And what we did is we created a way for the teachers to actually be in the experience with the kids and have control over the experience. What this is experiential learning at scale. It's a way to scale the experience across multiple students. So why do we pick VR versus AR or XR? VR is the only medium that's 100% immersive. There are no distractions whatsoever. So it's entirely devoted to experiential learning and discovery-based learning. It simplifies complex concepts. It has been highly proven outside of education, in the military, in training simulations for flight. Remote learning on demand is a very interesting concept in terms of being able to travel places or participate in meetings and lessons that aren't local. And also, it's a very good intrinsic motivation tool. So how does VR stack up against traditional learning? Well, there's only one real study that has been put in place. It's not very well studied yet, but in a Beijing classroom study, 27% better immediate recall with VR versus traditional learning, 32.4% after 2 weeks, and more importantly, underperformers and what I would describe as special ed kids did 15.8% better than traditional performance that they had under traditional learning. Schools are adopting VR, but it's early, so our goal is to make it easy and affordable for educators to scale experiential learning. So how do we do that? On our platform, teachers access content, they run VR labs, and then they have access to insight. All of this is on a single platform. And this is how we're different than just putting a child in a headset and letting them experience VR. The teachers can see students and monitor their actions in real time and shape the experience with voice controls and video controls using the teacher console that you see there. Also, the students are immersed in virtual worlds that are optimized for experiential learning, where they can interact not only with each other, but also with the teacher. So it's not they're just visiting the pyramids as if they're visiting the pyramids themselves. They're interacting with other kids in a very exploratory, immersive experience. So we did a pilot that included a 3D model introduction to the cell science lesson, where students then shrink down inside the cell and play a game to energize the cell. And then they had a quiz at the end. We partnered with the New York Hall of Science to do this. And we used this to prove the concept of scale, working with six districts on Long Island, including Jericho, which is the #1 district in the country, according to Niche. It was over 3,000 students, 6 districts, and 10 schools that were included in the pilot. And what did we learn? We learned that a lab environment for science was the best way for this to work because A regular teacher in 5th grade, for example, that had multiple subjects to teach, didn't really have the focus on the science like a science teacher does in a lab environment. It worked best for grades 5 through 7, and where teachers were much more involved, doing more voiceover and engage with the students. Interestingly, the average score was 3.6 out of 5 on a quiz. There was one school that got 3.4, and they had no curriculum integration with the cell as of yet. So the students saw the topic for the first time and still scored 3.4 out of the quiz, on the quiz. Special ed did particularly well. E&L didn't do as well because we didn't have that integrated into our product yet. From a market perspective, we're looking at New York first, then going statewide, state by state, and being very opportunistic there. From a competitive perspective, it's an open landscape right now. This is all new, AR, VR, XR, and we're not going to be in the hardware business long term. We're going to package that in the short term, but eventually we're really in the software and content space, and we really believe it's going to be a very collaborative and partnership-oriented model. We have 3 districts committed today, forecasting 20 by the fall with $200,000 in annual recurring revenue. We did the pilot. We have our first districts coming on board. We're delivering in the fall. And right now, we're investing in product development and content creation, looking for 1.2 in funding for the seed round, and looking to really grow the business over 5 years based on what the market looks like. Relative to the team, as I mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder. Francisco D'Souza, the former CEO of Cognizant Technology Solutions, is an early investor. Jeff DePascal, our CTO, and Tom Copeman and Carlos Cashman, board advisors. Embarrassed to say that we have 100 years plus experience, and I'm a big chunk of that. But among us, we have 19 startups that have all been successful, the largest one being Cognizant, which is an over $20 billion company that Frank was an initial founder in. So we're happy to engage and chat. Please look me up. We'll be here. And you can reach me at leon@vroggo.com. Thank you very much for your time today.